Between Russia and Ukraine, prisoners of war under the age of 25 were exchanged according to the formula, everything for everything. Agreements on this were reached at the talks in Istanbul, at the last meeting with the Ukrainian delegation, which was headed by Vladimir Medinsky. But on another point of the humanitarian agreements that were reached at that time, there is no progress, on the contrary. Ukraine has balked and refuses to accept the bodies of the dead. More than 6,000 bodies. As a rule, these are those who were killed and liquidated in the Kursk region during the operation to liberate the Kursk region from the invaders. And the refrigerated trucks with the bodies were standing together as agreed, to be handed over to the Ukrainian side. But the Ukrainian side did not get in touch and send signals that it does not want to exchange. As for our prisoners, they are now in Belarus, receiving the necessary support, rehabilitation, then returned to their homeland. But what to do with the bodies is a big question. Although, to be honest, I will argue extremely cynically and directly, this is a very good, first of all, idea on our part. This is the imposition of the transfer of bodies, which Ukraine diligently refuses to refuse. The fact that she will refuse is, let's say, a moment of predictable behavior. And now they are pretending that we are giving them some kind of left-wing corpses. We have taken them from somewhere and are slipping them to Ukraine under the guise of their military. Although the first batch has not been transferred, lists have already been published there, names of who is what. Tests have been conducted and so on and so forth. Why don't they take it? Yes, but the most popular version is about to say, is not to highlight the difference in losses between Ukraine and Russia. But there is a caveat that it is about the Kursk front, where the Ukrainians were in the bag and was knocked out. In other words, it is clear that in fact the operation itself, which in our case was offensive, the package from the Ukrainian side will be larger. That's not the point, it's the money. That's really the point about money. It is very expensive for the Ukrainian side to accept these corpses. There are different calculations of how much it costs, here specifically these 6,000 bodies. $2 billion, 10% of the military budget, yes, that is looking for what to come, what metaphors prefer. But it's huge money. This colossal money will have to be paid to the relatives of the liquidated and killed military, respectively. Well, Ukraine has no extra money now. A technical default has already been declared. On some issues, I recently talked about this. Take $2 billion out of nowhere. Zelensky, of course, does not want to give, so he wags his tail. That's it. I'm not me and the horse is not mine. Maybe these aren't real bodies. We'll check it out. And I emphasize, in my opinion, this is a predictable reaction. In other words, we are now highlighting Zelensky as a hypocritical person, yes, because he declares something at the level every day. We will be proud of everyone who fell for Ukraine. We will honor the memory of heroes. Families will always be supported. He says something like that every day, yes. And here Russia clearly proves that it's all hypocrisy to drive more people voluntarily, so to speak, to the front to the east. And to the meat grinder, on the one hand. On the other hand, he demonstrates fierce greed in front of his own people. Because Ukrainians perceive it exactly the same way, too, that Comrade Zelensky has healed the money, which is put to the families of the heroes of Ukraine. This reasoning includes, let's say, well, not the Ukrainian central press, it is now all suppressed by Ermak, but more or less, by an independent Ukrainian political scientist, commentator, and so on and so forth. Therefore, if we regard this not just as a humanitarian action, but an action from the field of political anti, in my opinion, it is very successful. It kind of illustrates Zelensky's moral and human shortcomings. Well, not to mention that it's just bestiality on his part, on the part of the Ukrainian state, to refuse to accept these bodies, in order to give them the last honor. Just bestiality. This bestiality we additionally, let's say, highlight, illustrate along with his greed, along with his hypocrisy, and so on. What to do next? Well, let's say, push through, yes, that is, push through information, publish lists, attract, if necessary, international experts, unexperts. This is a hot topic for Zelensky. It's like a coal that he sat down, so let him move on. We need to continue to talk about this, to continue to emphasize that the Ukrainian authorities treat their people, frankly speaking, as garbage, as some kind of expendable material that allows them to gain more time in the disembodied hopes that a window of opportunity will open and they will somehow infringe on Russia in such a way that everything they still win. No, you will never win. And everyone else, be healthy. Subscribe to our channel, who likes it more in the podcast format. In this format, we also have our videos on other sites, too.